Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I am James Ham. Joining me, Mr. Sean Cunningham of ABC 10. What's going on, Sean?
Happy New Year, James Ham. Happy New Year.
New Year.
Or what was it in Trading Places where it was Merry New Year? Merry New Year. The Eddie Murphy character was so great.
And doesn't oh no, he says happy birthday. Frosty the Snowman. When they wake him up, he goes, happy birthday. the old Frosty the Snowman with like the really weird dude who keeps like stealing their hat. And
so
weird.
Great. I was asked on the air last night, like, oh, what were your New Year's resolutions? And I've come to the conclusion that I think resolutions are kind of silly, especially considering, like, on ABC 10, my coworker Kevin John, we were having a Kings discussion, and he said his New Year's resolution was for the Kings to make the play-in tournament. And I said, you fool! Like, how? like how
fool?
Well, talk about like someone who didn't understand the freaking assignment. Like, a New Year's resolution is for you. You just chose something you have literally no control over. So I want people to understand, like, if you're doing a resolution, it's something that you have absolute control in, whether you lose weight, maybe you work as hard as you can to get a job in the new year. Maybe you want to add on a different hobby or activity, whatever it may be. Those are resolutions that you can control. So because of that, I never ever, I think resolutions are stupid. For me, it's always, hey, if you set a goal, that's great, do that. But I'm the sports cliche, James. I live day to day.
Yeah, we're definitely day to day. Like, we're all day to day.
We're all day to day.
Yeah, we're all day to day. I think I don't ever do New Year's resolutions. Maybe at some point I did, like once or twice, but I'm someone who decides what's for dinner at like 5:00. And if at that point, my wife and I will either go out or we'll DoorDash or we'll go to the grocery store and start making something then. We're not usually planners. I mean, we have a lot of food hiding and stuff and here at the house, but so we can make stuff. Like, we
Are
actually,
you like chipmunks? You just like store it away for the winter? What's going on?
We do. Like, we have a full-size refrigerator like everyone else. And then we have a full-size refrigerator in our pantry. And then on top of that, we have a big box freezer as well. And we'll get like a half a pig. Like, I know people look like, what? Like, we'll split like a pig. And so we always have like pork in the freezer, and we do big Costco runs and stuff. It's because we live in the sticks and It's easier to buy in bulk. And we also have 2 teenage boys. So we're always buying in bulk and storing in bulk. But yeah. But rarely do we pull anything out of the freezer until it's way too late to have dinner. We just kind of, like, I don't do New Year's resolutions just because that's kind of who I am. I'm kind of, I live moment to moment. Yeah.
Please tell me that when you go and do these big runs, you don't call it going to town. Like, you don't live that far away to where it's referred to as going to town.
No. Like, going to Costco only takes me maybe a half hour. Like, it's not that far. Yeah. Maybe 35 minutes on a bad day. It's not that far. And Costco delivers. Like, we do orders on Costco and they deliver here the front door. And it's only like, I think it's only like $10. So yeah.
That's well done. See, and I would play the part, like, for King's resolution, what should be their resolutions, because God knows there should be a laundry list of them. But I mean, but individually, I just think resolutions, you should live day to day. That's how you should do it. Yeah. You can plan goals, do it, but
yeah, I would like to get in a little bit better shape than I am right now. And I'd like to work on my back and get my back stronger, because that's always my biggest issues. I have a bad back. But like, I don't do Lent. I'm not giving anything up for anybody. Like, that's, so I'm not doing any of that stuff. Sean, let's get into it.
Yeah.
So again, ABC 10's Sean Cunningham. I am James Ham, ESPN 1320's insider and the Kings Beat insider. And we got something huge, ginormous coming up on Thursday night. It is the second Kings Beat happy hour, where we're calling it Off the Record with the Kings Beat virtual happy hour. Yeah.
Off the record with the Kings beat virtual. Okay.
Part deux.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Hot Shots Part Deux.
Do
it. So if you missed the first happy hour, this is like, it's different. It's kind of like if you were someone else that was hanging out with us in the podcast, except for the stories are a little crazier. We add liquor, which always changes some of our decision making. Sean and I go off the rails on occasion, but it's also a place where you, the reader, the listener, the participator in the King's Beat, can ask us questions. You will like unmute your mic, you pop up on the screen, we'll let you ask questions during segments. And we're bringing in a guest. We're bringing in I think it's one of the biggest guests you can possibly get in Sacramento, in my opinion. Like, we're not going to bring in a player and then tell a player he can sit here and drink and then have him do something silly. Because like, I don't even want to know what Buddy Hield would be like having a few drinks and being on a podcast.
No, he'd be just fine.
Just fine. Yeah, I had no chance that could go off the rails at all. But Sean, I'll let you announce, because we're all good friends, but you can go ahead and announce.
Oh, I get to unveil the curtain.
Yeah.
This week's, well, this is for part deux.
Part deux.
I feel there's no better guest than to bring in the wonderful, handsome. Where else can we go down?
Yeah, Debonair.
He's
taller than both of us.
He's slightly clumsy and very self-deprecating, which is why I love the guy. And it's Mr. Sam Amick from The Athletic, the former Sacramento Kings beat writer from the B, then Fan House, then SI, then USA Today. So we were like coworkers when he was at USA Today, because we were owned by the same company. So yeah, it'll be fun to kind of go down his path. And he's got a wealth of stories that he's been around the chaos of the Kings and chaos of the league. And it should be some fun times for sure. And I hope we get to crack open a few stories that that hopefully we can make somewhat public for this very off the record conversation.
Yeah. So it's off the record. So that means that you're not allowed to record it. Someone records it. I was just telling D'Lo and Casey, if someone decides to record it, I'll just ban you. So you won't get to come on the King's Beat anymore, which is lame. I don't think we'll ever have to do that. When you come in and you start like hanging out with us in this situation, you'll get it pretty quickly. It's a good time. It's a good time where we're literally talking about things that probably we shouldn't sometimes, but also it's just a more relaxed atmosphere where you can really just kind of like be part of what we're doing here and part of the family. So that is for premium subscribers. If you are not a premium subscriber, you still have time. I'll probably cut it off late Wednesday night to become a premium subscriber, because it's just too difficult to send out the Zoom link on Thursday when it's not just one mass email to everyone. But yeah, if you want to become a premium subscriber, last time I think we had like 35 people in there or something like that, and everyone had a great time. And we even had the amazing situation where we had a gentleman from the Czech Republic that was on, who had stayed up all night long. And like the dedication of Kings fans worldwide. I think we all know that Kings fans worldwide, they're out there, right? There are Kings fans everywhere.
I'm expecting a big Portugal contingent with the dedication you have to Nemias Keita updates. There better be some Portugal folks in this one.
I agree. So shout out to Joshua, who is our friend in the Czech Republic, who was on the last one. And I'm pretty sure he'll be on this one. He'll be up all night. And that's sort of the dedication. So it's 5:30 to 7 on Thursday. Last time we ran a little bit long. You can show up for the whole thing. You can show up for part of it. But I think anyone who was on the first one, they are like super excited to get to the second one, because it's like, holy cow, that was fun. So anyway, we'll brush through that a little bit. I mean, again, premium subscribers, hopefully you guys jump on board and have a good time with us. It's again, probably the best thing about being a premium subscriber is that you get that access. Outside of that, it's been a crazy couple of days. Again, it's New Year's, and Sean and I, like, we'll talk about this before we really dive into, the play on the court. Big well wishes to our good friend Gary Gerould, who unfortunately tested positive for COVID on Sunday night, following the game. And just, he's vaccinated, he's boosted, all that stuff, but you just are always concerned. And so hopefully everything goes fine with him. He's probably going to be in protocols for the next couple of for like the next week or 10 days. But Sean, that just kind of surreal, right? Because we're all around Gary all night, and so it kind of hit home after, as media, we've dodged this for the most part throughout the entire pandemic so far.
Yeah, I mean, it's just you see it. It's made its way through the team. It's made its way through several staffers, and you see even game night stuff. I mean, Scott Moak was open about him testing positive, missing a few games. Which, by the way, I don't think we mentioned. Like Thaddeus Davis, I think his name is, who's filled in for him, has done a pretty good job. He sounds like the SNL guy, but he also does a pretty good Scott Moak impression. So yeah, I know Moak. I know Moak's going crazy in quarantine. Hopefully, he'll be back by Wednesday. Fortunately, he's asymptomatic, but I think that's the hope that we'll have with G-Man and his family. And obviously he's a little bit more longer in the tooth than Mr. Moak. So yeah, we're looking forward to seeing Gary back there, and I know it's gonna kill him to miss games. It's gonna absolutely he's gonna drive Miss Marlene crazy in that, cooped up in that household. So shout out to G-Man and Marlene. Hopefully all goes well, and I know they've got a pretty solid support system, and they've got more than capable backups to fill in the void. Jason Ross will be there, and as long as hopefully nothing else spread over there. So good people over there, and we'll hope to get it. I mean, it's just real world situation. I mean, you look at those lines outside of the venue to get in, and the testing area is just bigger and bigger every single game. So these are the holidays. We know what it looks like in the NBA. It's real world stuff. You protect yourself and kind of go forward.
Yeah. So again, nothing but love for G-Man. I think it's something that people don't know is that, like, the Sacramento media, we're not that big of a group, and we're a very, very tight group. Like, most of the media members sit together at dinner almost every single game.
It's tight quarters in there, and you get to know a lot of the people, and it's ever changing. Yeah, it's ever changing. But some of the ones that, like G-Man, myself, you, I mean, the ones that have kind of been there a while, it's you start to see some of these people more than you see your own family. So it's definitely, you wish everyone the best for sure. Everyone's going through it.
It's jarring. All right. So we're going to get into the basketball talk. And, I think we're going to start with Tuesday overreactions.
All the overreactions.
See, Sean is still on the fence about overreactions.
I like them. They just end up pissing me off. It turns me into a rant usually.
It's good. Ranting
good.
Sean is good, Sean. It's good YouTube and good audio. Yeah. So we're going to try to push Sean's buttons. Like, yeah, come on, Sean.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So Tuesday overreactions. Tyreese Halliburton.
Mm-hmm.
He said this just whimsical thing as he was going off the court after a huge victory. New year, new us. Sean, what are your thoughts?
I'm actually really surprised how many people ran with that comment. And it's unfortunate that was done in the in arena interview with Thaddeus, who we talked about a minute ago. Or actually, was it Thaddeus? Yeah, it was Thaddeus. Filling in
it
for
was
Scott
Thaddeus
Moak.
because no one else was there.
No one else. No one else was there.
I'm pouring hot tea. That's what that noise is. I'm pouring hot tea.
Thought you were using the restroom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look. It was definitely a tongue-in-cheek comment. Like, he's kind of poking fun that, hey, we just showed what we are against the Dallas Mavericks in a game-winning situation, another COVID depleted team, and then that same COVID depleted team comes out and hands us our lunch in the second half, and we quit, and then here we are beating Kings beating a COVID depleted team at the last possible second, where Jimmy Butler really had a great look to put that game away and you missed. So that would have forced overtime. So
forced overtime.
But, I think it's more tongue in cheek. I think he was kind of just laughing at it a little at their own expense a little bit, fortunately. But I think there were some people that took that and were like, oh yeah, look at this. They think they're back. They think they're back. Here we go. Let's go.
Well, I think
It's
there are
like,
even some
no.
fans who think, oh my gosh, they're back. They won.
Right. Sorry to clear my voice right there.
Yeah, Sean, like I think the line that I used is always too high, always too low. We've gotten away from never too high, never too low.
Yeah.
And now we're like every single thing is an over examination. And for me, I think it was interesting. Alvin Gentry said I think it was pregame or postgame. I think it was postgame on Friday that he believes that the Kings have the pieces in place, that they have enough talent to get done what their goal that they set out to do, which, to be honest, it's making the playoffs. That's the goal. It's not winning. He said, we do not have enough to win an NBA championship. We do have enough to achieve the goals, but everyone has to play better.
For sure.
And so I think that's what we're looking at, like the new year, new us. Do you think that it's possible that there's like an epiphany moment for this team where they just go, look, like we have to win the games that we're supposed to win, and we're going to lose a lot of the games that we're supposed to lose, but we're also going to steal away a couple of wins here and there. And if you do that, if you win the games you're supposed to win, or win games against sub 500 teams and win games around you against teams around you in the standings, and then steal a couple of wins, you're going to be at 500 or maybe a little notch above. Do you think it's possible, or are we going to still see the same team that, wins an exciting back-to-back and then lays an egg and gets abused and then comes back and wins?
No, I think we're good. I think we know who this team is. I think we've seen it. This is who they are. I don't think there's a switch that they're going to flip that all of a sudden makes them a more rugged, physical, hit first team. I think the one thing that they can control, though, is finding the unit that rebounds well, defends as well as possible. I mean, it's no secret. We've talked about over the past few podcasts, James, that Alvin has clearly found going bigger kind of a better option for their team, especially, to help out on the rebounding, all that. But I do feel the one thing they also can control is to keep their foot on the gas. And we've seen that for the better stretch of this 10 and 11 stretch with Alvin Gentry, which is they show the want to try to be this run downhill team. It doesn't always look pretty. I mean, it's seldomly, it's one game it does, one game it does. It's literally a quarter to quarter proposition for them. But I do feel that is something that they can figure out with the group that they have. But no, to the greater point, James, I keep saying that maybe at best this is a 500 basketball team, and they're kind of showing that right now. But I also think that even when you're 500 and as inconsistent as you can be at 500, you tend to find that, okay, this is who we are. Things don't tend to get so hot and cold with this team, but that's exactly what they are. This hot and cold team, the one that gets punched in the mouth first, which I do feel that they can control a little bit. The scoring, I do think they can control much more than anything else because it shouldn't fluctuate the way that it does. Buddy Hield doesn't have to go out and hit 7 threes a game the way he did last night, but he also doesn't have to go out and shoot 4 or 5 times a game in games we've seen before as well. Like, you got to find that happy medium. But the one thing that I think is the biggest consistency with this team, well, two things really, is Deiron Fox has shown he's that player again coming out of COVID for the second time. He was playing well before going into the COVID protocols.
Yep. Averaging almost 27 a game in the 5 games leading into protocol.
Absolutely. And there was some talk about him being in Western Conference Player of the Month discussions, Player of the Week discussions. And then here he is coming out and having a sensational game after maybe that first clunker with the Dallas game. He's now rounding into shape a little bit better. I love the free throws. I couldn't believe that 14 out of 15, the guy who historically struggles at the free throw line, but it also kind of coincides with what we've seen over the last 2 years, where some reason, I don't know if it's his birthday, if it's Christmas, if it's the new year, but he tends to have some pretty nice games in the month of January. Like, the month of January is very kind to him. So if that's what it takes, great. We're about to see some really good Deiron Fox. And the other one is Tyrese Haliburton, who's just, as you mentioned, James, like, You mentioned it. There's someone from Greece in the media was calling him Mr. Double Double, and he's kind of living up to that a little bit. I love to see the ball
Christos
movement.
Saltos.
Yeah, shout out Christos. I think these are things that are good. I think you're starting to see some when this team is good, what does it look like? But it also looks like even when they're bad, that some of these things can still be there. We've seen when this team is bad and Tyreese Haliburton still have a fantastic game. Sometimes you want to see the scoring higher, but I still think these are the consistencies that are going to move the team forward. But if there's anything that Kings fans should probably hope for this new year is to hopefully shake up this core, because I think no matter what, even if it's your 10 and 11 under Gentry, this team still shows what they are, and they still need a shake up in the worst way.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that 100%. I was on with D'Lo and Casey on Monday, and they had a stat. It was something like when the Kings lose, the average loss is like 18.3 points. And when they win, the average win is like 8.3. I think it's really interesting what we've seen over the last week. We hadn't seen a close game in so long. That's what it felt like. Like, how many times are we getting to check the 2-minute report to see if there's something different that happened, and if someone made a mistake or whatever. And the fact is, there isn't a 2-minute report because the game is never decided the final 2 minutes. And so we're at this point now where you're starting to see this team get into some close games. And not only that, like, come away with a big win, a big, Chimezie Metu hits a 3, Deiron Fox hits a pair of free throws, and they've won, again, 3 out of 4. But, it's the game on Friday where they get absolutely lambasted and they give up a 24-2 run in the third quarter that just feels so bad. And so like what I said, like the problem with this team is, like, you cannot be never too high, never too low. It's always too high, always too low, because that's who they've become. They make you feel bad about them when they lose, and when they win, you kind of, it looks like they figured things out, but it's not. That's not who they are either. And so Sean, it's just really one of the most, again, of all the seasons I've covered, I don't want to say, because it's too early to say it's the most disappointing team, but it's like, that's what we're talking about. It's probably going to be the most disappointing team unless they figure it out and all of a sudden they make it to the play-in game or they make it to the postseason, because we just don't know.
Well, and to that, James, objectively speaking too, let's be honest, and I'm not trying to take away from their wins, because certainly this Kings team was COVID depleted themselves and went out and found a way to win a couple games. But the success that they've had over the better part of 2 weeks has also been against teams that are missing upwards of 8-9 players. And you're barely beating these teams. So again, like, look at Dallas. Like, they still had Kristaps Porzingis and Jalen Brunson and, serviceable, fantastic former All-Star and KP. I'm not trying to take away from them, but in a sense, I kind of have to. Look at the Miami Heat. They're depleted. They still had Kyle Lowry and they still had Jimmy Butler.
And Tyler Hero, who's averaging over 20 a game this season. They still had players. I want to take, this is such a weird time, Sean. Like, how do you analyze this, like, month of a season where, like, again,
it's tough.
It's so tough, dude. The Sacramento Kings on a Sunday in January played against a team that literally at one point had Nick Stauskas, Kyle Guy, and Chris Silva, all 3 former Kings, on the court together. At
one point, yeah.
Stauskas hasn't been in the NBA for 3 years.
And to that point, James,
Chris Silva was. Yeah,
I remember looking at you during that game last night or on Sunday night, and I literally, I was like, dude, they're playing against a bunch of guys that probably won't be on the roster come April.
Or come next week.
Or fair, yeah. But if you just look at what the playoff team for the Heat will look like, because I think we all know that, that's going to be a playoff team.
Mm-hmm.
But these guys aren't going to be on the floor. And that's what I'm talking about, because I'm trying not to take away from the wins, but also with the grain of salt, knowing that you're going up against teams that are depleted. However, the Kings, for even when they were depleted, were still, for the most part, still playing some pretty rotational players. Yeah, you relied on some guys that maybe you didn't have, that are a little farther down the bench. It created opportunity for a guy like Damien Jones, who has really risen above the fray. I think that's a good thing. But more to the point, like, just, it's a very hard thing every team is going through it. So every team is having to navigate these waters, and you're going up against guys that there's no scouting reports for. You're going up against guys like, that are all of a sudden careers are literally being made. I mean, like, I had mentioned, oh my God, that guy looked like a Hall of Famer against the Kings.
Yeah, Omer Yurtseven. I mean, he looked like that in the California Classic, and then, he's got to play because he got nobody else. And man,
yeah, I mean, I told you that I was looking at, we were talking about guys that we had our eyes on, that could be available in free agency, G League, what have you. And one of those guys was Stanley Johnson. Goes to Chicago, has a 10-day. Then he jumps to the Lakers. His 10-day expired with Darren Collison's today, I believe. And the Lakers want to bring Stanley back. Like, there's literally going to, like, look at Marquise Chris. He's with Dallas. He's been sensational for them. And the likelihood that he stays there is probably pretty good, especially with whatever's going on with Willie Cauley-Stein over there. I mean, he could certainly be an upgrade in that department. So, there's careers that are being made. I think that it's an interesting time, but I also think it's put I talk about how this core of the Kings needs to be shaken up in the worst way. And obviously it takes two to tango. And we've talked about that. And obviously sometimes you need more than two teams just to pull off any kind of trade.
Yep.
But I think this whole thing has kind of derailed trades and things of that nature, because you just don't know what to expect from one night to the next. You almost have to let this thing go through the entire league and then finally figure out what you have. I mean, you're over 30 games in now to the season for all these teams. And by now, I think we talked about last week, James, which was, I think by now we know what the Kings are with the constructed as they are now. But there are other teams that are so much question marks, even 30 games in, that you just don't know. So I think there's some teams that have that are they going to blow it up? Are they not? How does it look? But this COVID thing has just completely derailed the league. And what does it look like 2 weeks from now? I mean, we've got essentially COVID is spread through more than half the Kings roster. What happens if it gets to the other half of the Kings roster? Like, what does it look 2 weeks from now?
No, I totally agree. I mean, that's the problem. We don't even know where it ends. Like how many of these guys? I know Justin Jackson signed with the, I think it was with the Boston Celtics.
I think, yeah,
and then went into protocol. Isaiah Thomas signed with Dallas. Now he's in protocol. Like, he'll spend his 10-day contract in protocol. That's where we've gotten now, where, like, we have no idea who's going to be available from one night to the next. I mean, at this point, Rashawn Holmes is, of course, out for the Sacramento Kings. He's in protocol. But then Porzingis goes into protocol. So how many more Kings are going to get it from the Kings still had, I think it was like 10 players that had not been in protocol. So there's a problem here, like, that we could keep seeing this thing like go on for another month or two. I mean, eventually you're going to get to the 450 players. Right. And then on top of the 450, we're talking another 75 or 100 players. I mean, like, Wesley Johnson was signed by the Clippers, who was one of their coaches.
Wow. Yeah.
He was signed by the Clippers for the Kings game. When the Kings played the Clippers, Wesley Johnson was signed. And that gave him his 10th year in the league. And now he gets lifetime medical, and he gets another $800 a month as part of his retirement.
Good for him.
That dude had been out of the league. I mean, we're seeing Stauskas hadn't played in the league in 3 seasons. Like, Isaiah Thomas has been trying to get back in the league for like 2 years. It's opened this door. Darren Collison, I mean, he's been asked to come back like 2 or 3 times and wouldn't. And then finally he says yes. And I don't know if he'll get another 10-day or not, because it doesn't look like it, because you only get, once you have your players out of protocol, you can't sign 10-day contracts if you don't have a roster spot. So
and maybe weird. with the Rondo trade, maybe that opens up something for him. But it is weird that he decided not to come back. He had the Clippers and the Lakers both clamoring for him. The Lakers looked like they wanted him the most, and he said no. But then this 10-day opens up, and he's like, okay, I'll do it.
Yeah, last year.
10 days.
Yeah, it's nuts. Well, 10 days for him is like $150,000, which Collison made. Yeah, he made plenty of money, but that is easy money to go show up. You might have to play 2 games. You might have to play 3 games. That's it. Go to a couple of practices. and you're going to make a bunch of money. So when it comes to this, go ahead.
Sorry, I don't mean. I do wonder though what the pressure is. Like, if you're a team that's almost completely healthy. Granted, Rashawn just went down with COVID, but you're going up against a team that's missing 8 or 9 normal players.
Mm-hmm.
The pressure to win in that circumstance, you can say that, oh, it's just an NBA game. You got to respect every NBA player. I get it. But like losing one of those games feels like you've lost like 3 straight.
It does. It does. And not even making it close. Not even making it close. That's usually the problem where you walk out and you're like, I mean, we talked about it. The Philadelphia game was the worst game that we've seen. And that's the pre-COVID outbreak, right? That was a bunch of dudes who were just out for other reasons. Like, and the Kings get thumped by like 5 subs. I mean, that's not what should happen. I mean, like the Kings should have more intestinal fortitude than to do that. That's just, but it's not just that game. It's been so many games. And so again, it's so hard to put your finger on what's happening. And then you watch a guy like Deiron Fox who takes 3 games to look like normal. You watch Davion Mitchell who comes in, has an incredible game in his first game, but gets winded. His second game, non-existent. His third game, he's back to like being productive. Like there are these players that like don't look like themselves. I mean, we look at Alex Len out there and it was like, oh man, Alex Len was a train wreck and he took an extra like 4 or 5 or 6 days to get back. He might not get back in a game shape for like another 2 weeks because it's not just getting in game shape, it's getting in game shape coming off a virus. And so some bodies like react to it differently. And so like, Sean, I don't even know what to make of it, but I do know that we hit December 15th and literally the league like almost shut down because of all the players missing. I mean, there was one Sunday where 27 players went out on one day. Mm-hmm. But now we're down to it. Sean, there's only a month before the trade deadline. The trade deadline's February 10th this year. It's way earlier than normal, at least what I remember being normal. Like this is a point where if you're the Kings and you're at you're in like solo possession of 10th place, but you're like a game out of 9th and I think they're like 3 games out of 5th. Yeah, but you're also like 5.5 games out of last place. Like if I'm looking at this and I look at the Clippers who just lost Paul George to an elbow injury, and I'm looking at some of the other teams that are around me, the Minnesota's right above you. And Minnesota's always a hot mess and goes through the ups and downs. No one is convincing me that like this group of teams are great above you. Why not swing for the fences? And I know it takes 2 to tango, but like, aren't we at that stage where you're like, is there a way we can take advantage of this situation and not just make a trade to make a trade? Make it like I wrote this on Sunday, like in Sunday Musings. Make a trade because you're not good enough, but you got to do something, right? Like this looks like that moment where there are going to be teams that bow out and just say, look, there's no way we're going to get through this season without like, we're not going to be good. So let's put a couple of guys up and make them available. And, I think that this is that moment where the Kings have to like be ultra aggressive and look for contracts that are longer, look for players that fit their player arc, look for, the perfect deal, which I'm not sure it's ever out there, but there certainly seems like there's got to be some deals that would make this team better right now that could help them push them over the hump. Almost like we talked about the baseball analogy last week, almost like a team that's looking at, we need one more starter or we need one more bat or we need one more reliever. That's what this feels like. Like the Kings need all 3 of those. They need one more starter. They need one more bat. They need one more reliever. But a lot of times you get in this situation where those pieces become available in a normal season. But with all this chaos, it seems like this should be a perfect time to go out and get some better pieces.
No, it does. And to keep the baseball analogy going, you said swing for the fences. I think you have to identify what those are. And it's kind of the caution sign that I would throw up when Monty McNair was talking about, even in his press conference, about wanting to be able to pull the trigger when the big move happens. And then if everyone sees that the big move happens is, Terrence Davis and Mo Harkless, and like, that's not it. Right.
Yeah, so DeLon, right.
Right. Like, so when you look at what could be out there, for example, like swinging for the fences is definitely a Ben Simmons, Domantas Sabonis type move. Ground rule double might be Christian Wood.
Christian Wood is a good solid ground rule double, isn't he?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's swinging for the fences, but it's not bad. I don't know that I love it, but it would certainly be one of those, okay,
Second or third starter.
Right. This is the type of move we almost have to make. Like, look at Houston. But again, I actually think that there's the teams people need to look at more so, because I think, for example, and I mentioned it in the last podcast, I believe it was looking at that team like Memphis, who, and I'm not saying the Kings would be involved with Memphis. That's not what but like, you almost need to find a situation like Memphis finds itself in a great situation, I feel like. But they're the ones that need to be going out there and being ultra aggressive to finding that other piece. It's not like it's going to be a piece that's going to be a Ja Morant, like face of your franchise, but it's the one that's going to help them make that push from 7 to 4, getting into possibly that top 4 in the conversation. Right now, I think they are 4th in the West. I don't have it in front of me, but they're just right outside. I think there's some separation between 1, 2, and 3 with Golden State, Phoenix, and Utah.
Oh no, they're 4, and they're separated, 4. And they're separated too. I mean, there's a big separation between 4 and 5.
Right. And they can, and there's pieces I'm sure that they're identifying right now. I mean, I used Harrison Barnes as he's a guy that could go in there and fit really well. Now, I don't know what Harrison Barnes nets you from a Grizzlies team that's trying to make that type of push, but you do have some nice draft picks. You do have some, that's your biggest commodity in your chest here right now in Sacramento. So if you do have that third team that's out there, I almost look at one of those teams as the ones you need to partner up with, because they're the ones that are going to be trying to add to their collection of talent to give them that push. Sacramento's in the same way, but in a much, much lower regard. Like, you're looking for a franchise altering move right now. Memphis isn't making a franchise altering move. They're trying to get that push, that added help into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at Memphis, what you're looking for there is short-term boost, something that can get us over that next step. They're almost 5 games up on Denver at this point. But that, again, see, Denver is a funny situation. You look at Denver is a team that's just waiting and waiting and waiting for their reinforcements to return from injury. So they're waiting for, Murray, and they're waiting for Michael Porter Jr. And if they can just hold the line until those guys get there. So I think you're right. Like, every single one of these teams has such a different look. But if I'm the Kings, I'm looking at guys that are under contract long-term, guys that are in the age 24 to 27, guys that can help me now, but can also be part of a 3 to 5 to 8 year run. That's what you're looking for. And so, like you said, Christian Wood, like, I'm all over Christian Wood right now if I'm the Kings. I mean, it's been a mess there. There's got to be some personality. I haven't talked to Christian Wood. There has to be some sort of like issues behind the scenes besides what we're seeing in Houston, because that guy's way too talented to not be able to get into the league and stick up until this point. But what's he averaged? Like 20 and 10 last year. He's at 17 and 10 right now. He shoots a 3. He would fit perfectly next to Rashawn Holmes. Like, he's a guy that I'm circling. He's only under contract for 1 more year after this year. And it's at like 13 point something or 14 point something. It's not something crazy, but like, I think the Kings they've tried for this superstar swing, right? They keep holding on to Buddy Hield and Marvin Bagley, hoping that 34 million, 35 million will yield them some star if they throw in enough picks. Maybe it's time to go get a guy like Christian Wood, who's at 14 million. So you can throw, say, Tristan Thompson and Robert Woodard, and then a 1st-round pick. Maybe that's enough to get a Christian Wood, because he's only under contract 1 more year. And then if you get him here, hopefully it works and you stick it out. And I think he's a guy that could be part of a building block. Again, he's 2 years older than Deiron Fox. He's 4 or 5 years older than 4 or 5 years older than Haliburton. But that's what I think the Kings should be looking at right now, as opposed to everyone just waiting around to see if you're going to give all your draft picks for Ben Simmons.
Right. Well, and it's fortunately, I do feel there is a strike now mentality. Like, you need to do something quickly, But if the difference is to do that, let's, I'm going to play a fantasy world right now. Do that trade, James, let's say on January 10th, right? Or see what happens with Ben Simmons that you might be able to be a part of possibly later on. What if you wait that month, and where are you? I mean, obviously that's a franchise altering move. You don't care about the playoffs at that point. Whatever happens in the season, but that's a franchise altering move. Like, sometimes you just kind of have to wait it out. And
see, that's the
tough part. Well, and again, I'm not the most excited over someone like Christian Wood. But I do see why people would be. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I do think
I mean, hey, it could be part of one move that leads into another. Like if you somehow make the move for Christian Wood, now do you offer up Harrison Barnes and Buddy Hield for Ben Simmons with a future first round pick and take back a little bit more on their end? And next thing you know, you've made two moves. So you actually make the move that makes sense, because if you're going to have a guy like Ben Simmons on your roster, you need Christian Wood. You need a shooter. You need a big that can shoot. So he could be a guy that for long stretches plays the five and can stretch the floor. So I'm just saying, like, look, I know this is all like wild and speculative, but like, why not? Like at this point, like you're bad and you've been bad for 15 years. Like
right.
the why not shouldn't be, can we please just make the play in? Can this group just hold it together enough so we can make the play in and get trounced in for, even if you make it to the playoffs, somehow you're going to get trounced in the 7-game series. So, I mean, we're talking
congratulations. Here's
5
Phoenix. Congratulations. Here's Phoenix or Golden State.
Here's Golden State. Yeah.
Which
you go ahead and
everyone's been wanting to see that series in a playoffs at one point, where you see the Kings and Warriors meet up with each other, but that ain't the year. That's not what, like, we've all wanted to see a playoffs between the Kings and the Warriors, but a 1 versus 8 just doesn't seem like that would be a fun
it wouldn't be fun, right? Well, no. And I mean, like, look, the Kings, no matter what, they're going to have a tough time getting past that. Like, to get up to a 4 or 5 is not going to be easy. Right. So I'm not saying like that's going to be the outcome here, but if you can somehow get to the 6, then that gives you the opportunity to not play one of the top 3 teams in the first round and not just get completely trounced. So yeah, like Sean, I'm open to whatever at this point. Like I just look at this season as, you know who you are, you know what you are. Don't fool yourself. Don't let a 3 and 4 stretch fool you. Don't let a 5-game stretch fool you where they win magically. You know who this team is.
Like, yeah, I mean, I think there's people who would look at that and go, "Oh man, if you're only 3 wins better, like we could have won this game, we could have won this one." And I can easily double down on that and go, "There's 6 of them you probably shouldn't have won." Yeah. Like it's easy to say one way or the other, and then it's like, okay, well now you're down here towards, you talked about, James, there's three games separating, I think, the 10th and like the and almost last in the West right now. Like it's not that big of a difference. So
yeah, the Kings aren't that far out of last place.
They're not. And again, there are people who would argue, hey, if your draft picks are your biggest assets, then why not hold on to them and just, forget the season and just let it. I get it. Like I understand that, but to me, it's my argument to that is you don't need to get younger. This team does not need to be younger. Even if you're hitting a reset, it can't be a hard reset. You have to have a reset to where you're still competitive, because right now, if you're just going to mail it in and say, we're going to do it the right way, and we're going to just totally, rebuild. You already did that once. You've done that multiple times. And I just don't think there's a stomach, even financially, for a market like this to go out there and support another rebuild. So it can't be a hard reset.
Yeah. And if you're looking at the arena, like Sean and I are all the time, someone won a prize from Section 217 the other day, and whoever put up that prize, like, literally gave away like 40 quick quack car washes or something. I'm not sure what it was.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was.
But all I know is I looked up in the stands and there were 40 people in the section that were celebrating wildly like they had just got free tacos. Which again, that's like the strangest thing. People will kill each other for a t-shirt at an NBA arena that's
a t-shirt.
I think it just says proud, right? Yeah, a t-shirt.
I mean, everyone wins free tacos. I mean, I'm not trying to slam Taco Bell because God knows that's a sober up food that I've become.
I love me some Taco Bell.
Yeah. But you're losing your mind over, what is it, 89-cent taco, 79-cent taco? Like, what are we talking about?
I think they all went up in price, Sean. They're more
Did they?
expensive. They're like
Okay.
$1.19 taco, but
You think
still,
you
yeah.
would think I know.
I think our point though, our point here, Sean, is that an announced crowd of 14,500. I know one of them was 8,200 people came to the turnstiles. That's it. 8,200. So what Sean and I are seeing there, you can't continue to be bad. And if you want to do that, then I don't even know what happens. I watch soccer. I wish there was a relegation. I wish there was a way to get relegated. And the problem, and I'll also say this, like we talked about draft picks. The problem that the Kings have is that they would never get relegated. They're never in the bottom four. They're never in the bottom two. They're just good enough to get a bad draft pick. And so again, I talked this on D-Lo and Casey a little while ago. Like how many number 7 picks, how many number 8 picks have the Kings had in their history? And it dates all the way back. It's like Lionel Simmons, Walt Williams, Bobby Hurley. Jason Williams was a home run at number 7, but even like a moderate home run that was a risk at number 7. But it just like Nick Stauskas, Ben McLemore, but the Jimmer pick was number 7. The Marquise Chris pick that they traded was number 9. The Davion Mitchell pick is number 8. Where they were when they moved up for Fox was they were at number 8. They moved up to number 2. They fell back to number 5.
That was a fun year.
Yeah, that's a fun year. Well, at least
that's literally a roller coaster.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's his season in a nutshell. But I think that my point is that you don't get better by being the 7th or 8th pick in the draft. Very rarely do those players like ascend to greatness. They are usually solid rotational pieces. Most of the time they're starters, not all the time, but very seldom do you get an all-star or do you get a really, really like game-changing player at that mark. And that's why like the process, losing and tanking, does make sense for some teams. And so the Kings still, even this season, they're not bad enough to be in the top 5. And this is a 5-man draft, a 4-man draft. Can they get a player that's going to make that much difference? And then I'll even say, Sean, like the other thing that people aren't even considering, like I went through it with my son who, has been a competitive soccer player forever. He went through his senior year in high school where they got to play 4 games and they were against like 2 teams they played twice because of COVID. It was just a mess. Like we are going to hit a phase where the COVID situation actually impacts the development of young players coming into the draft. And it will take longer to develop players because they didn't play for a year or 18 months. It'll be harder to evaluate players. We'll have players that become way better than we ever thought they could be and like go from like players that don't even get college scholarships to really, really good players, because we had this whole time where kids aren't playing sports and the evaluation, the development, all that stuff. So like if I'm Oklahoma City, I'm looking at my like Trevor Trove of draft picks and I'm wondering, how do I trade a lot of these? Because that's coming. It's going to be one of the long-term effects that we see down the line from the COVID era of high school and rec league and AAU sports.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're right. I mean, you could, but I also think too that the value of that pick, and we've talked about it ad nauseum, James, where it's, the pick is never worth more as much until before you hitch a name to it. Like before you hitch a name to it is worth the most it can possibly be. And to me, I think that's still, despite what you're saying, especially with Europe and international markets of players and G League and, guys who, okay, maybe I didn't get the scholarship. All right, let me just jump into the G League. I've got enough, backing. I have, I'll hire an agent, whatever it might be. There's going to be some risk takers out there. And I think you're going to see a lot of home runs later in later rounds of the draft, because there's going to be guys where, okay, maybe we're not sold on this part of his development. We don't know this much because we don't have a sample size of games because so many games have been canceled. Recruiting, scouting isn't out there. that's where you're going to start to see it. Like the second round pick is all of a sudden going to have a lot more value than maybe it did in years past. So I could easily see that for sure. And I think the G League angle as well is really going to be incredibly more valuable over these next couple of years.
Yeah. I mean, like, for example, look at a guy like Brandon Boston, who just had a miserable freshman season. And then all of a sudden you're looking at him as an NBA player. It's like, oh, okay. Now
And
look
by
at
the way,
talent.
they love him.
Yeah.
They absolutely love that kid.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is like the sample size that we're getting from some of these players has always been small. Like you're like, most of the draft is speculative anyways. But now the sample size is even smaller. So guys who have been in college for 4 years, we at least have a track record. We at least know who they are working to become. And some of these players that we've seen for years and years, like we know like Chet Holmgren is going to be an interesting player when he gets to the NBA. It's the other guys, and it's the class behind that. It's the class behind that. This completely had some of their, there aren't AAU tournaments, or there weren't with, like 300 teams at an AAU tournament. Everyone's piling into their car and doing it. There just wasn't, because of the shutdowns. So again, I just think it's one of those things that people should think about. And again, if I'm the Kings, I'm aggressive. I'm throwing caution to the wind, especially Monty McNair. If he gets done with this trade deadline and you get through 2 trade deadlines and 2 off seasons, and the 4 big moves that you made were Tristan Thompson, Mo Harkless, Terrence Davis, and Alex Len, and none of the 4 are in your rotation. They aren't even playing. And the only 2 things that you can really pin your hat to are your 2 draft picks of Ty and Davion, if you can still pin your hat to those. And then that you discovered Damien Jones and Chimezie Metu. And even that, they're not even under contract after this year. So,
and I think what's great about that too is, I mean, for an organization who is keenly aware of the way things look, you've got Vivek Ranadive sitting between Wes Wilcox and Monty McNair for 2 straight games. The past 2 games, both of them have been seated courtside, where, for the past month, probably hadn't seen Monty in person in a long time, up until maybe that one practice that was on right before Christmas, or maybe it was right after, I can't remember, but he made sure to go around, and I remember posting the video, and I didn't even want to say, hey, everyone, look, it's Monty McNair. I wanted people just to kind of see it organically and like, oh, look at Monty making the rounds. And, here he is talking to Alvin, and he does this all the time anyway. It was just at a time where obviously the media availability is they're in the building, and here we are. So, yeah, I think appearances say a lot. And I think they're trying to show that, hey, there's talks going on. But I also think, like we've talked about it, James, over the past couple podcasts, is like, I think everyone looks at Sacramento and looks at Monty and this front office group as like having to operate out of desperation.
yeah.
And to me, if you make that Christian Wood move, for example, I'm not saying it's out there. It's just, it's an intriguing name based on what's going on in Houston right now.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do that, I think that could fall under the category of possibly operating out of desperation, because it is that risk you almost need to take. But, that one for me has me a little bit.
You'd rather have the guy who hasn't played a game the entire season because,
and possibly mental health issues,
and who, couldn't hit a free throw in clutch and refused to take it to dunk and won't shoot a 3. Yeah. So like, I get it. I get it. The Kings, I mean, but at some point you're going to have to act out of desperation because you are desperate.
Yeah. Even like the Domantas Sabonis, Miles Turner. I mean, there's so many other intriguing names that can be out there. I mean, we haven't even mentioned Portland and what's going on over there. Like,
that's train wreck.
Yeah, and everyone's, everyone's waiting to see what Dame will do. And it's like, okay, you don't have Neil O'Shea in there anymore. I mean, who's running the franchise? I mean, I think everyone's looking at Portland going like, you guys have to do something. You got to move CJ. You got to move. Are you going to move Dame, or what are you going to do? And yeah, what a mess.
It's a mess. All right, so we've had some good stuff. Let's just cover Tyreese Halliburton. Is like, he just keeps dealing out assists left and right. It's absolutely spectacular. He's had 10 assists or more in, it's something like, I think it's 8 assists or more in like 10 games, but it's I mean, he's dealing and really developing. He's posting double doubles. I wasn't happy that he only took like 6 shots the other night. That's a problem. He needs to continue to be aggressive. But then we also have, you mentioned earlier, the Deiron Fox thing, where he's hitting 14 out of 15 free throws, and he's carrying his team down the stretch and engaged on both ends of the floor. All of a sudden looks like himself. And then,
you know what's weird though? I was thinking about this as we were talking
Yeah.
about COVID. Like we didn't mention how absolutely hard COVID has hit the league's officials as well.
oh God,
And
yeah,
it kind of made me wonder, like, okay, Deiron's getting some calls. He talked about how his arms were bruised up and cut up after the game for everyone hacking him. And I was kind of thinking to myself, I was like, man, if that was a true NBA officiating staff, would he have gotten to the line 15 times?
that's a good question.
I don't know that he would
I
have.
totally agree. Especially we saw it earlier in the week where the Kings couldn't buy a free throw. Or what was the game where, against the first Dallas game where Porzingis like flopped like 6 times and got call after call. I mean, the Kings were in the penalty like 7 minutes and 40 seconds into the first quarter.
Yeah,
like, what in the world is happening?
He's so deceptive, and obviously the flopping, the flailing, that's all going to catch. But I remember looking at a few points of those. I'm like, no, the Kings are actually touching him though. Like,
yeah,
he was like, he was. I said it was a masterclass in the way he was, drawing fouls and getting the officials to look at it, but he was still getting hands on him. And it was almost worse the second game, James, where they went out and turned that. It was funny, like in the third quarter of the Heat game, I remembered thinking to myself, it's a 5-0 run to start the third, and Gentry called timeout. That's how gun shy they are about the third quarters and these starts. And they started well, as Tyrese Halliburton pointed out, the second Dallas game, they started out the third quarter pretty well. They forced Dallas to make the first time out.
It was 67-67, and then they gave up a 24-2 run.
And then it's those 6-0 run, 12-0 run, 18 run. Now it's 24. What are we doing? How does that happen?
How do you miss 12 consecutive shots?
I don't understand how. Well, and to that point, okay, great. Get to the free throw line.
One time. The only 2 points they had was 2 free throws by Harrison Barnes.
Yeah, get to the free throw line. Like, just what and then like I see, like, you see them start rolling downhill. Do the same thing. Don't walk the ball up court. Like, if they get to quick bucket on you, quick bucket back. Just attack.
Yeah.
And they're just not that. I mean, they're just not that team. And I don't know. I think the ball movement stagnates at that point, and it's just like every box you're supposed to check what not to do, they seem to go up. We got that one. Up. We got this one.
Yeah.
It's just bad.
It's wild. Okay, so let's get to Damien Jones. Has taken like huge steps. I think we should all be super happy for Damien because he's a good young guy who's a hard worker. Tristan Thompson and Alex Len. I mean, when Rashawn Holmes comes back, are they out of a job?
Should be. Both of them. I mean, Damien Jones not only has earned the minutes, but if you remember back, even in the, I don't even like to call it, this is unfair, but the Luke Walton days, of
the Luke Walton era of Sacramento Kings basketball.
But even of this season, like when they would go down 20, Damien was part of the groups that would bring them back or go out there and at least have a positive impact on the game. So it didn't just start in this month. I mean, this is stuff that had been groundwork that had been laid even when Luke was still coaching. I mean, everything Damien has done has been a positive. Now, you can maybe question some of the shots. I don't know if the outside perimeter shooting is going to still be there with him, but I think he has a positive impact. He runs the floor really well. He's definitely rebounding, which is why he's on the floor. Because, even though Tristan, for whatever reason, hasn't been able to get off the bench or be that kind of guy, you could say maybe it's a shape thing. I don't know, but there have been times he's impacted the game well, especially on the offensive rebounds.
Yeah.
But it's those defensive rebounds. Either he's not running the floor well, he doesn't get back quick enough. And that's why the likes of Marvin Bagley and Damien Jones are there. I mean, they can run and they can rebound and they can lead. They can get out on the break and get out.
Even Metu. Yeah,
for sure.
The trio of them, they were so good in the win over OKC. I think that's the win where they almost all of them had, I think Metu had 8 boards and the other 2. I think Damien Jones had a career high 14 and Marvin had 10. Like that's what you're hoping for. You got young springy legs. Go get us like That's why they're going big. That's why we're seeing the Kings go big. Okay, so we've got one other big topic to discuss, and that is the business of basketball.
Did we land on one? We've been talking business the whole time. What did we land on?
Yeah.
I'm excited now.
Sean, and all your years of covering the Kings.
Oh, no.
What's your favorite trade?
Hey.
We've lost Sean for a sec. We lost Sean. Oh, wait. Sean is back.
I'm back. I was scratching my eyebrow.
Okay, so Sean, and all your years of covering the Kings, what is your favorite trade? Because there haven't been that many major ones since I've covered the Kings, but I certainly would like to hear like what was one. I think I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, you probably know what I'm going to say. I mean, the Ron Artest trade is just out there. I mean, it was so. This is what's so weird about it, James. As you know, you heard about this trade for the better part of a year, as if like it was like going to happen, and it's like this trade's never going to happen. This trade's never going to happen. And kudos to the Maloofs. I mean, the Maloofs were the ones that really kind of spearheaded that effort to get Artest, to make that thing happen. I don't know what was holding it up. I'll never know what was holding it up. Certainly them being able to trade a borderline broken Peja Stojakovic for him was a coup, because I think they thought they were getting the all-star that they had seen in years past. But Ron Artest was that franchise-altering move. He came in and they're like, no, we're making the playoffs. Again, it's one of the most, it's for all the teams I've covered, it's my favorite Kings team by far, because of just how crazy tough they were, how crazy they were. Bonzi Wells, Ron Artest, Kenny Thomas was sensational in that season. You had the budding Kevin Martin, you had Brad Miller and Mike Bibby, who were still there. Oh my gosh. So I still think, had Ronnie not gotten suspended, that they would have beaten the Spurs in that series. And that sounds wild to say. It really does, but I think they would have. And to me, it's my favorite because Artest came over as he didn't know what you were getting. I mean, you heard all these, you saw these negative things, you saw the malice at the palace, you saw all these things, and it's like, what is this guy going to be like when he gets here? And it'd be like you grabbed a guy off the park who can play ball, who comes in and he's just like as normal of a human being as you've ever met in your life. And I know I'm talking about Ron Artest, folks, but Ron Artest is like, hey, Ron, the same guy who got a job at Circuit City when he was playing NBA basketball. Like, this is who he is. The same guy.
So he could get a discount.
The same guy. Yeah. He loved, I was working at KHTK at the time. And the guy, we would always try to bring athletes in the studio at certain points. He came in, he's like, no, I love being in the studio. I want to do this. I mean, there were other kind of motivating factors for him, which I could probably get into with our premium subscribers for the happy hour. Be sure to bring that up. Remind me, and I'll get into that. But no, I mean, you're right down the street. He lived up in Loomis, and it was on the way right off Highway 80, and he came in and he'd come in and do shows. It's like, I remember Carmichael Dave hit me. I was like, man, Ron wants to come in again. And this is like, man, we just had him for like 4 straight days. What are you gonna do? Tell him no? Like, no, this is great radio. He was fantastic, telling all these stories, and just easily, without a question, just the most normal dude. I swear to God, like, it sounds weird to say because people think he's out there, and just he's almost too normal to be a celebrity figure, if that makes sense. Like, you kind of have to have a bit of schooling or training and how to be in the public eye. Ronnie had none of that. He's just far too normal.
I knew that's what you were going to say. Like it, as I was like saying it, I'm like, oh, I bet you he's going to go there.
He changed the complete, not only the dynamic of the team, he changed the whole makeup. They could do so many more things, and he made people around him better. Like, I remember looking at this team going, this team's kind of soft. Like, you got a couple guys that are nice, but primarily he comes in to completely change that. It was incredible.
Yeah, he was different. I that's a move. If the Kings could find a Ron Artest type like I just don't think that those guys exist in the league right now. There's, again, are you taking on someone with a different personality if you were to make a Christian Wood trade? Maybe, but I don't think it's like that. There is something different. He demanded something different. He's just totally different than any player that I think you could go out and get right now. I'm going to say my favorite trade. I mean, it's the biggest trade that while I was there. Well, no, it's not the biggest trade.
I think, okay, go ahead. Sorry.
The biggest trade is DeMarcus.
I was going to say, I couldn't be the one you're going with. But.
No. My favorite trade was the Rudy Gay trade because that was like an all-in move. It was like, look, we're going to get somebody who's still young, who still has potential to be great. And then you got him. And like, for people who weren't around, who haven't, like, we've talked about Rudy Gay in the past, but he's like Switzerland. Like, everyone liked Rudy. He's in the middle of the locker room. Everybody like fed off of, anyone who had gripes, it used to be, it was Francisco. So Francisco was like the godfather early in the, when I first started covering the team. He was the guy who was like, no, like, calmed everybody down. Like, there are things that Francisco did behind the scenes that, like, to protect other players and stuff like that, which showed leadership. But watching Rudy Gay on a nightly basis, it frustrated you because he could have been so much more, but he was so gifted. And there were moments where he did things that you're like, this is like things that you would see on a poster in your room when you were a kid. Like, he had a George Gervin, like finger roll. Like, there were things that Rudy could do. And he was such a nice guy and such a cool dude. And then he stuck around. Like, did it end well? No. Was he a difference maker? No. The team easily could have been much better if they didn't, like, get in their own way with the, firing Malone and, not keeping Isaiah and all that stuff. But I thought that Rudy was never the problem. He probably wasn't the solution, but watching him on a night in and night out basis, there are certain things that he did that were so beautiful on a basketball court that I enjoyed watching it. And I also enjoyed, like, his wit, and he was funny. Like, he's, when you're in, what happened to OJ Mayo, like, well, I guess when you're in Milwaukee and you're hurt, you eat, like, he always had like a one-liner and stuff. I thought he was a good dude. And that's probably my favorite. I mean, like, the DeMarcus thing is, like, always going to stick out. But yeah,
I think when first of all, there's two things that come to mind when they traded for Rudy. One, I was so pissed off because I was on my phone and I knew something was happening. I didn't know what it was because people kept calling me, and I'm on a freaking cruise ship pulling out of port heading for the Caribbean and they trade Rudy Gay. And I'm so pissed off about it because I'm literally, I can't, there's no internet. Like, you can't, I'm out of service. I'm literally pulling off. We're like almost completely out of Miami. And anyway, it was bad. Yeah, they're and people are literally like, Sean's tweeting from a boat because they, I was like, I'm on a cruise ship, I'm not gonna be able to get to this. But it was also a coup. Like, look at what they gave up for Rudy. It was like Gravis Vasquez, and
yeah, it wasn't like, I was trying to think, what didn't they take back Aaron Gray in the trade? Like, it ended up being a bigger trade, right?
Aaron Gray came here. Yeah, there's 3 players that came here. It was Rudy, Aaron Gray, and
man, I like that.
Quincy Acey, I think, was the other one.
Oh, you might be right. Okay.
Yeah. See, I don't have it in front of me, but yeah, it was. I just remember what they got rid of. Gravis was like the biggest thing, and I want to say John Salmons, wasn't he?
That makes okay. He got traded to Memphis here. He was with Quincy Acey and Aaron Gray. There, we nailed that. Chuck Hayes, Patterson, John Salmons, and Gravis Vasquez.
Yeah, I remember the John Salmons because if you remember when John Salmons came to Sacramento as a free agent the first time, he walked away from an verbal agreement that he had with Toronto.
And then he had a verbal agreement with the Suns as well. He did it twice.
Yeah, he did it twice. And I remember, well, the Toronto one was hilarious because they were a little bit farther along the way. and he said God didn't want me in Toronto.
Yeah,
Like he's
God
just like,
wanted him in
and
Sacramento.
he had a hard way of just articulating it, but it was like I just remember saying like, people, okay, God hates Toronto. Okay, Sacramento over Toronto scoreboard, and we all know how that turned out. But yeah, you didn't. I mean, when you think about it, you really didn't give up that much for him. And I thought, like, with all due respect to those players, Chuck Hayes, my guy, and like it just
Well, he was unplayable at that point.
yeah, at that point, it wasn't like, it was more contractually. And I thought this was going to be the perfect piece to put around DeMarcus. And I think there's those that thought it could have worked. I think it probably should have worked. But yeah, that's a good call, James. I like that one.
Yeah, no, he was fun. He was fun to watch. Good dude. Still, when I see him, still always says hi. Like,
Yeah.
I remember Kobe's last game in Sacramento. I think I even had video of it. I had pictures for sure. Kobe's last game, Rudy grabbed his oldest son, who he's got to be like 7 or 8 now, at least. He grabbed him, and Kobe like kissed the baby. Like, I have pictures of Kobe literally like smooching on Rudy Gay's little boy. Yeah, which I sent to Rudy actually at one point. I showed him the pictures right after Kobe passed. He was in Sacramento, and he asked me to send him the pictures. I sent him the pictures.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, one of the better dudes, and like all of the stuff with Rudy, he was fun. He was fun to have around, and so yeah. All right, Sean. I think that's gonna do it. Yeah. Do you have any final thoughts?
Do you have any final thoughts? I don't. I think that we've covered so many things, but I think if there's one really bright spot to look out for, and we've talked about it already, but let's double down on this Mr. Double-Double with Tyreese Halliburton. I think this is some like it's interesting because I've heard someone brought up, Tyrese in the way that his impact that he's had on the game. And then I remember how Rajon Rondo would come in and get assists, right? He does a lot of the Rondo-like assists, but I say that in the way where it means it's the most, here's the bucket that's the most effective. Here's the most highest efficient shot that one could take. It's all around the hoop, right? Like all these assists that he picks up, they're meaningful. A lot of the ones that Rondo would do, you could argue weren't, but these feel different. They have a different feel to them than Rondo did. And I think right now what we're seeing from Tyrese is kind of that blossoming flower, if you will. And fortunately, he is under team control, and I think that's a good thing. We talked about, I think in our overreactions, did Tyrese pass Deiron, and that's foolish. But the point being, they're different players, and I think right now you're really starting to see that true moment of him becoming an NBA player. It's not cute anymore. It's not, oh, look what this rookie can do. It's like, this guy shows promise. I think he's really stepping into this element of his game more so than what we've seen in the past. I think this is a really important stretch for him.
Yeah, it's crazy to watch him develop. I remember, like, something you said there triggered a memory of what Kawhi Leonard said. Actually, it was what Greg Popovich said about Kawhi Leonard. He said, when we finally got Kawhi to understand that the reason why we needed him to shoot more was because it made our team better, and we were putting him in positions to score, and it was because those positions he made us better. And when he realized that it wasn't just we were telling him to shoot more, you've got to score more, when he realized that it was we were telling him that if we're going to win, you have to do this. This is our best opportunity to win. You are our best opportunity to win. That's what I'm waiting for, that moment with Ty. He's had it with the setup with being an assist man. He's even had it with scoring for certain stretches, but he needs to understand that in order for this team to win, he has to get to that moment where it's like, oh, I get it now. If it's not just me being selfish, it's that this is how we get better. Not me. This is how we get better. This is how we take the step, how the Sacramento Kings take the next step. So yeah, he's so close to it. You can see it. And if ever there were like times where we would like to have one-on-ones with guys, it would be a really cool thing to have a discussion with him about, because I think it would go a long way, which is always fun, because that's what I miss about being in the locker room. It's those
no
moments
doubt.
where you're having like literal basketball conversations with guys about, who they can be, what they can be. Not on the record, off the record, just having basketball conversations, asking Willie Cauley-Stein if he would potentially watch Dennis Rodman videos so he could become a better rebound, because they had similar body styles. It's just he was 4 inches taller. And like, who? Like, oh dear Lord.
And a competitiveness that just is can't even measure. I mean,
Well,
unreal.
of course.
The other final thought that I had too, because I had teased it on the previous podcast, which was I did see Licorice Pizza. Fantastic. Fantastic. Oh. Yeah.
I haven't watched it yet.
A bit of a absurd potpourri, like things that happen around the main storyline that I think are just really fun, that I think most people will enjoy. And
is it theaters or is it
it's theaters?
Streaming?
Yeah, no, it's theaters. But one that will be streaming that I also saw, I actually went and saw it in the theater, was Tragedy of Macbeth. So if you want to see Denzel Washington and Frances McDormand, 2 of the best actors in our generation, get down on some Shakespeare, that one's for you. Yeah,
look at Sean.
But I will say, Licorice Pizza, that's probably my favorite movie this year. I'm a pretty big fan of that one.
All right, well, I'll have to check it out. Okay, so let's finish with this. The Kings Beat, off the record with the Kings Beat virtual happy hour. I think I just keep extending the name because I think it's funny. Part deux. Part deux. It is on Thursday from 5:30 to 7. It usually does run a little bit longer. The great Sam Amick is going to join Sean and I.
Great though.
Is he great?
I don't know if he's great though.
He's great.
Oh, he's not bad. Keep our Muppet thing going.
I'm going to introduce him as the not bad Sam Amick when we have him on the happy hour on Thursday. But yeah, the happy hour is absolutely it's a good time. And so you need to become a premium subscriber in order to get the link via Zoom, and it should be fun. So jump on board, become a premium subscriber at the Kings Beat. Make sure to give us thumbs up and like us on subscribe on YouTube. Do the same thing on iTunes. That helps us bump up. But everything is going really cool here. And we're working on it. It's almost there. We're going to have for premium subscribers also a Kings Beat Discord channel. And so that has some really interesting potential that maybe people aren't thinking about, but it'll be another way where you can kind of tie in and get to Sean and I and ask questions and stuff like that. But you'll get some other content that you just aren't going to find anywhere else. So
I'm kind of excited about that because I know absolutely nothing about Discord.
Yeah, well, I didn't either until last week, but we're good. We're going to figure this out. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of cool stuff there. And hopefully it's something that that brings just another layer to the Kings Beat coverage. So for ABC 10's Sean Cunningham, I am James Ham. Good to see you. We'll see you twice on Thursday. Kings Beat Happy Hour, and we'll have another pod. So see you soon.